हाँ हाँ हाँ।
उसने छोटी मोटी नौकरी ले ली इधर सामान ढोने का, उसको सारी कमिटियों से भी हटा दिया गया क्योंकि वो उनकी वो मॉनेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट्स मीट नहीं कर पाया। पर जॉर्ज जो था एकदम आगे बढ़ गया। ही वॉज फाइंड लाइंग ragged एंड ड्रंक इन द गटर वन मॉर्निंग। जॉर्ज एक दिन पी करके एकदम लेटा हुआ कहीं पाया गया। A member of the ladies' temperance refuge fetched him out, took him in ad, got a subscription from him, kept him sober a whole week. तो एक लेडी ने उठाया उसको, सब्सक्रिप्शन लेके आई, उसको सोबर बनाया एक हफ्ते तक। देन गॉट अ सिचुएशन फॉर हिम, द अकाउंट फॉर इट वॉज पब्लिश। फिर उसकी,
मतलब एडवर्ड जो था,
वो तो भला था ना।
भला भला होता, उसने नौकरी ले ली छोटी मोटी।
हाँ, उसका दिवालिया निकल गया ना बिजनेस का। जॉर्ज ने सारा पैसा सट्टे में गुजार दिया।
अच्छा अच्छा।
अब जॉर्ज जो था पीप पा करके कहीं लेटा हुआ मिला तो एक लेडी आई, उसे उठाया, फिर उसने लेडी ने पूरा एक अकाउंट जो था उसके लिए रखा गया, है ना, और न्यूज़पेपर में रखा गया। जनरल अटेंशन was thus drawn to the poor fellow and a great many people came forward. अब बुरे हालात गरीब बच्चे के लिए बहुत सारे लोग जो थे ना वो लोग सामने आए and helped him towards reform with countenance and encouragement. और दुए दिखड़े आदमी को रिफॉर्म एंड encouragement का मिला। He did not drink a drop for 2 months and meanwhile was the pet of the good. 2 महीने तक उसने कुछ नहीं पिया, सब लोग उसको प्यार करने लगे। Then he fell in the gutter and there was general sorrow and lamentation. फिर पी के फिर से गटर में लगा, फिर से लोग रोने लगे, अरे क्या हो गया बेचारे का। But the noble sisterhood rescued him again. They cleaned him up, they fed him, they listened to the mournful music of his repentances. बड़ा रिपेंट किया जॉर्ज ने, और सारी सिस्टर्स ने भी उसकी पूरी की पूरी बात सुनी। They got him this situation again. An account of this was also published, and the town was drowned in happy tears over the re-restoration of the poor beast and the struggling victim of the fatal ball. बेचारे आदमी की जब री रेस्टोरेशन हुई जॉर्ज की, तो पूरा टाउन ने रिलीज किया और ये किया। A grand temperance revival was got up, and after some rousing speeches had been made, the chairman said impressively, "We are now about to call for signers, and I think there's a spectacle in store for you, which many in the house will be able to view with dry eyes." There was an eloquent pause, and then George Benton, escorted by red sashed detachment of the ladies of the refuge, sped forward upon the platform and signed the pledge. और जॉर्ज बेंटन ने प्लेज साइन की कि मैं अब आगे से शराब नहीं पीऊँगा, राइट। और ये प्लेज को जो था वो था। The air was rent with applause, and everybody cried for joy. Everybody wrung the hand of the new convert. When the meeting was over, his salary was enlarged the next day. He was the talk of the town and its hero. An account of it was published. उसकी salary बढ़ा दी कौन? George Fenton fell regularly every 3 months, but was faithfully rescued and wrought with every time, and good situations were found for him. तो जॉर्ज बेंटन जो था ना, बार बार गटर में गिरता, बार बार जो थी उसको सिस्टर्स जो थी वो उसको रेस्क्यू करती थी। तुम सुन रही हो? हाँ, हम आज ख़त्म कर देंगे इसको, ठीक है ना। Finally, he was taken around the country lecturing as a reformed drunkard and had great houses and an immense amount of gold. पूरी दुनिया में उसको घुमाया गया लेक्चरिंग कि भाई एज ए ड्रंकर्ड का कैसे रिफॉर्म किया जाए। He was so popular at home and so trusted during his sober intervals that he was enabled to use the name of a principal citizen and to get a large sum of money at the bank. A mighty pressure was brought to bear to save him from the consequences of his forgery, and it was partially successful. He was sent up only for only 2 years. है ना। अभी आए कि भाई फोर्जरी तो भाई सब कर ही चुके थे, तो भाई तो केवल 2 साल की उनको सजा है और अच्छा खासा बैंक में पैसा मिलने लगा। When at the end of the year, a tireless effort of the benevolent were crowned with success, and he emerged from the penitentiary with a pardon in his pocket, the prisoner's French society met him at the door with a situation and a comfortable salary. And all other benevolent people came forward and gave him advice and encouragement and help. Edward Mills had once applied to prisoners' French society for a situation when in dire need. But the question Have you been a prisoner? We made brief work of his case. ठीक है ना? While all these things was going on, Edward Mills had been quietly making headway against adversity. He was still poor but was in the receipt of a steady and sufficient salary as the respected, trusted cashier of the bank. तो एडवर्ड मिल्स जो था आगे बढ़ा और बैंक में कैशियर बनने लगा. George Benton never came near him and was never heard to inquire about him. George got to indulging in long absences from the town, and there were ill reports about him, but nothing definite. One winter's night, Amma sun lo, Mama.
हाँ पढ़ो
Some masked burglars forced their way into the bank and found Edward Mills there alone. They commanded him to reveal the combination so that they can get into the safe. He refused. They threatened his life. He said his employees trusted him, and he could not be a traitor to that trust. He could die if he must, but while he lived, he would be faithful and would not yield up the combination. The burglars killed him. Edward Mills को burglars ने मार डाला. The detectives hunted down the criminals, and the chief one proved to be George Benton. A wide sympathy was felt for the widow and orphans of the dead man, and all the newspapers in the land begged that all the banks in the land would testify their appreciation for the fidelity and heroism of the murdered cashier by coming forward with a generous contribution of money in aid of his family, now bereft of support. The result was a mass of solid cash amounting to upwards of $5,000, an average nearly 3/8 of a cent of each bank of the Union. The cashier's own bank testified its gratitude by endeavoring to show, but humiliatingly failed in it, that the peerless servant's accounts were not square, that he had himself that he himself had knocked his brains out with a bludgeon to escape detection and punishment. George Benton was arranged for the trial. उसको ट्रायल के लिए लाया गया. Then everybody seemed to forget the widow and the orphans in the solicitude for the poor George. Everything that money and influence could do was done to save him, but it all failed. He was sentenced to death. Straight away, the governor was besieged with petitions for commutation or pardon. They were brought by tearful young girls, by sorrowful old maids, by deputations of pathetic widows, by shoals of impressive orphans. But no, the governor for once would not yield. Now George Benton experienced religion. The glad news fell around. From that time forth, his cell was always full of girls and women and flesh flowers. All day long there was prayer and hymn singing and thanksgivings and homilies, and tears with never an interruption except an occasional 5-minute intermission for refreshment. This sort of thing continued up the very gallows, and Benton went proudly home in the black cap before a wailing audience of the sweetest and the best that the region could produce. His grave had fresh flowers on it every day, for a while, and the headstone bore those words and a hand pointing aloft. He had fought a good fight. The brave cashier's headstone had this inscription: Be pure, sober, honest, industrious, considerate, and you will never. Nobody knows who gave the order to leave it that way, but it was so given. The cashier's family are in stringent circumstances now, it is said. But no matter, a lot of appreciative people who are not willing that an act so brave and true as this should go unrewarded have collected $42,000 and built a memorial church with it.